Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. I begin by acknowledging the oneness of the divine, the oneness of the Creator, with the devotional language that gives praise to and send prayers and peace to the Prophet Muhammad. This is my devotional language, and when something is important, I begin with my devotional language. If you're black and seeing this video, the only thing that anyone not in your situation, the only thing worthy of saying to you is that I support you. Nothing that I or anyone else not in your situation has said or done has freed you. And so you don't need my permission, you don't need my approval, but you have my solidarity. And I'm happy for you to do whatever you think you need to do in this time, and at all points going forward until you are completely free. That being said, I made a post the other day speaking very frankly and candidly about the reality that we're facing in this time. And the response from my white fans was really positive. There was a lot of praise of me. People said a lot of really beautiful things about me. There were a lot of hearts in the comments and in the replies. There were a lot of likes. There were a lot of shares. And there were a lot of people saying that they were found meaning and solace and felt better based on the post. I would rather be appreciated than to be disliked. I'd rather be liked than disliked. I'd rather have people in a good state than not in a good state. But that's not the point. The reality is that in all of this talking and in all of all of these things that have been done, hundreds and hundreds of years, none of this has freed black people. And I said that it's a really, the reality is that it's a spiritual problem. And so it requires a spiritual solution. One of the things I want to say is that the human condition is such that the inner reality of a human being is that the human being is a spirit. The spirit is the breath or the essence of the divine. The human being has an intellect or a mind. The human being has a heart. And the human being also has an ego. And the ego is obsessed with itself. The ego is obsessed with feeling good about itself. The ego is obsessed with judging others, with feeling superior to others. This is part of the human condition. A part of what this society does and has done from the beginning of this country and of this project is to give certain people relatively unfettered identity pride, to give white people unchecked identity pride. And so what the human condition does, what the sneakiness of the ego does, is when truth is spoken to us, the ego doesn't want to really sit with critique of itself. This is a human thing. It doesn't mean a person is evil, but the reality is that the ego many times will either reject what's being said, and so it'll say, no, you're a liar. There's all these, I've got this data. I've got all these talking points. I've got this ideology. No, I'm rejecting what you're saying. That's one of the ways that the ego will try to get out of it. The other ways that the ego will try to use is to turn it into a good feeling and to turn it into a way to feel good about ourselves. To say, well, yeah, I liked that post and I liked what that person said. And so I feel good about that. But the reality is that the good feeling hasn't achieved what needs to be achieved. You know, and I was very critical of myself in that post. And it's the reality that, and people were saying, no, you've done this and you've done that. And, I've seen a lot of people pat themselves on the back, and I've seen a lot of people, use what's going on to their advantage. A lot of people who are not in the black community, who do not live in bodies that are in danger because they're black. None of that is helpful. None of that is helpful. If a doctor's job is to save a patient's life and the patient doesn't live, then the doctor can say they tried, but the doctor knows that that was not a win. That was not a success. The only win is complete Black liberation. That's the win that we're talking about now. Are there other issues? Yes, there are. But why is it that we've been talking this talk for so long, and so many people have said so many great things, and it hasn't changed? Why is it that when a person speaks up about this specific issue, we divert and deflect to all sorts of other issues? We call that person un-American and all these things. Why is it that this language of the Black freedom liberation movement has been applied to everybody else? In reality, everyone has really benefited in great, tremendous ways. Every other group has benefited from this language that really is rooted in the Black liberation struggle. Why have others benefited? Like Dave Chappelle said, I'll leave that. Others have benefited, but the original people, that all of these other problems come from the fact that this society is not like other countries. This project that we live in is not like other places. What's different about it? What's different is that in Germany, the people were there for a very long time. They have an identity, they have a togetherness. Their identity is rooted in a shared experience that they have. Their identity is rooted in a sense of peoplehood that goes back a very long way. The same in societies throughout the world. I just picked Germany as one of them. The difference is that in this country was brought about by people coming from somewhere else. People who were rejected or were having difficulty in their own lands. So people in Europe, in North and Western Europe, who were suffering under tyranny in their own countries. And many of them were forced out of their own countries, and they were powerless in their own countries. And so they left and they came to a place where they didn't have a history and where they didn't have a sense of peoplehood. And the sense of togetherness and peoplehood and the sense of mission was created around that collection of European people taking over this land and then building it up. And how did they take it over? They took it over from the people who did have a sense of history. Indigenous peoples, Native peoples, First Nations, people who lived here and lived in harmony with the land, who lived in harmony with one another. Yes, there were wars before. Yes, people did. There were empires before. Yes, people conquered people before. Yes, there was slavery before. But none of those things existed in the way that it has here. None of them have existed before. This is a really unprecedented thing in human history, at least in recorded human history, to have this situation that was created entirely by a collection of outsiders who came in and cleared the people out and did everything in their power with a lot of the new technology. A lot of this is made possible by the new technology. Not only the technology of weapons, but also biochemical technology. Don't forget that medicine was used and scientific advancement was used to enslave the people, to kill the people, to commit genocide upon the people. And so the First Nations were pushed out, and everything was done under the power of the European people that came here to eradicate them and to push them out of the scope. And then enslaved Africans were brought, and the thing that was done here that was different and unique is that European people that came from different places gave up their identity and their historical identity of the people and tribe that they came from and came under a banner that only started to exist in this culture called white. And slavery and ownership and privilege and oppression became a racialized thing. Initially, very early on, there were some times that white people who were here as indentured servants and Africans who were enslaved did start to make some connections with each other. And there was a rebellion specifically called Bacon's Rebellion, where enslaved Africans and indentured white servants started to work together. And this is when some laws and some policies were put in place to make sure that slavery became an African, a black reality, and ownership and full citizenship became a white reality. And then we have what we call the expansion of whiteness. So you have people coming from Italy, for example, that came later that weren't accepted in the beginning. Irish that came later and the Irish that weren't accepted in the beginning. But then you have these expansions of whiteness so that they're brought into whiteness. So yes, they did have a period where they weren't fully accepted as white, but over time, after a generation or so, that became the case. Read a book called The History of White People that explains this. But the reality is that in this society was not established by a group of people who had history together until they started this project. And then they created this concept, they created an identity of whiteness. And that identity is what allowed for people to be dehumanized. And so once it's not enough to be a human being, and once our peoplehood is based around being white, you know, somebody said in the comments of what our brother Sadiq wrote, well, isn't race a made-up concept? Isn't race a social construct? Yes, it is. It's science fiction, but it's social reality. Money is also a social construct. You know, the $100 bill isn't connected to gold. It has value because we say it has value. But if your mother were starving to death, and I had $100. And I would give her $100. I say, I'm not going to give you this $100 because it's a social construct. The reality is that $100 bill can get her the food that she needs. So it's the matter of life and death. And the reality is that this is built into who we are. And so once that started to happen, the reality is that we started as a people and as a nation and as a society, we took on this idea that membership in the human family doesn't necessarily mean anything. And so all of the other issues that people experience in American life are born out of this issue. The reality of what has happened, what's been done to the First Nations, to indigenous peoples, what's been done to them. And because these were things that were necessary, and then also to enslaved Africans. These are the things that were necessary to create America as it is, and to create the new world as it is. And then what happened because of those things, because of those realities, and because of what was done, because of those dirty, inhumane evils that were done. And let's talk about one of those for a second. One of the evils that was done is that when African people were brought into slavery, into bondage, it was not like other types of oppression that have happened before. Because like I said, first of all, being a black person, being in a black body, meant that you were a member of a slave class, even if you're free. And the police department was born out of a group of people that hunted down slaves. They were slave hunters. This is where the police department comes from in this country. But what happened, what was done very intentionally to African people, is that they were separated, one family from another, one tribe from another. People that spoke Mandinka or other languages in West Africa, these beautiful languages, Wolof and all of these different languages, were separated from each other so that they lost the outward knowledge of their names. They lost the outward knowledge of their family. They lost other immigrants didn't have that problem. They came in with a sense of, this is who I am, this is who my people are, this is who my community is. That's why there's Chinatown. That's why there's Little Italy. That's why there's a Polish neighborhood. That's why there's a Greek neighborhood. That's why there's a Polish association of people that can work together. But the reality is that African people, that was all systematically robbed over a course of hundreds of years. Women were taken away from their babies. Men were taken away from women. Women were violated and raped in front of men. Men were castrated and beaten in front of women. So we're talking about hundreds of years of this. So yes, other people have suffered. Nobody has suffered that specific pain. You understand? So not only was that the case, but the America was made rich and powerful because of those two realities of swindling people and stealing people's land. This big expansion of people who don't have historical. The Europeans did not have historical attachment to this land. African people did come here before Europeans, but they didn't steal the land and they didn't enslave the people. The First Nations of this country and the West Africans that came here, Mansa Musa was one of the most wealthy human beings that lived in human history. His brother Mansa Kankan Abu Bakr brought 25,000 ships from West Africa to the Americas over the course of decades. This is well documented. And so the relationship between the First Nations people and the West African people was a good one. They didn't colonize. Understand that other people, yes, there was colonial projects. Yes, the people conquered other people. Nobody has done what this new creation called white people have done. And nothing has been done, nothing that anyone has suffered in recorded history it matches what has been done to African people in this society. And so what the rest of the world saw was that society, by stealing land, by conquering land, by creating a genocide of the people who are connected to that land, and then by bringing in another group of people, by bringing in African people and separating them from the history of who they are, made America the most rich, powerful, wealthy, and affluent society on earth. And so other societies started following suit. Other countries started following suit. So this is deeply embedded into who we are. It's not just going to be some good posts. It's not going to be feeling good. We're not going to feel good our way out of this. We're not going to praise each other. We're not going to praise ourselves and praise and feel good out of this. This is something that's going to require a very deep and real revolution that shakes our understanding of ourselves to the foundation. And there's going to have to be something very, very real to hold on to. We're going to have to hold on to something that's before this modern time. And this is, for me, why the religion of Islam, the wisdom tradition of Islam, the theology and the first truths of Islam, this is what this has meant for me. And look at what Malcolm X said. Malcolm said, I've been in this country my whole life in America. And Malcolm used to say, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad used to say, the white man is the devil, don't worry about them. You know what I'm saying? And then when Malcolm traveled and when Malcolm went to Mecca, for example, and he traveled throughout the Middle East and he traveled through certain parts of Europe, he said the Muslims have a different way of being. He said, I drank from cups and ate from plates and slept in tents and in homes alongside people who in America would be called white. But they weren't white. There was a different thing about them. They had blonde hair, they had blue eyes, they had light skin, but something about them was not white. Or if they would say that they were white, they just meant it as like just a detail. You know what I'm saying? Like I have short hair, but I have a beard. Or a detail like I'm 6'1", or a detail like I'm this way, or a detail, it's just a detail. He said when those people over there, if they say they're white, it's almost an accidental detail. He said it means something very different. He said when the man here says he's white, he means I'm boss. And so what this moment is an opportunity to reflect, but not only to reflect, but what it's very frankly from me to you, what this moment requires is an absolutely fundamental and revolutionary reflection and a deep shaking of who am I? This isn't about freeing somebody else. Understand, for people that are in bodies that are called white, this isn't about freeing somebody else. This isn't for somebody else. Don't get it twisted. Because any sort of spiritual reality that you believe in, whether you believe in karma or you call it the universe or you call it God or you call it the great energy, if you believe in an unseen reality that's controlling the seen world, that's controlling the material world, if all you believe in is the material world, then I'm not really sure what to say. But if you believe that there is something unseen that's bigger and powerful, then understand that thing always responds injustice, always rewards injustice with certain outcomes. My man Sadiq, my brother Sadiq, wrote that beautiful statement, just speaking from his heart. And I'm so glad that he did that. Because I think a lot of people forget that that Rhymesayers is a business owned and started, a record label, a musical movement started by people that reflect the South Side of Minneapolis. The South Side of Minneapolis is diverse, and people get together and they have babies together. So we see Slug and Ant as white. We see Atmosphere as white. A lot of people do. I never did. But people see Atmosphere as white. The reality is that both Sean and Ant, their dads, if you see them, you would be seeing black men. Sean, their dads are black and native and white, and their moms are white. You know what I'm saying? And the same is true with Sadiq, and the same is true for the people that really started this musical movement. Spawn, you know what I'm saying? Musab, understand that Musab was the prominent artist when this started. You know what I'm saying? Musab is the one that really inspired a lot of us. Musab is the one that connected Slug to Ant. Musab is the one that created the style of songwriting that we do, that had a lot to do with developing it. So what Sadiq said that was so beautiful is, I fear what comes next if we don't do this. And ultimately, the reason that America is so fearful of black people have not done to them what was done to others what was done to them. Black people have never done to others what was done to them, not before or after America. Yes, there were black empires. The Moors went into Spain, the Ghana, Mali, Shanghai, these great black empires, but they never did to other people what was done to them, even when they were in power. And since then, black people have not sought retribution. And so the real fear is not the fear of black people. The real fear is of the cosmic justice of what has been done. I don't care if you're a person that has never read a whole lot of James Baldwin, and if you're not, I would suggest reading James Baldwin. I don't. If you haven't read Malcolm X, I suggest reading Malcolm X. Alice Walker, Maya Angelou, Cornel West. Listen to Minister Farrakhan. Just listen to what he's saying. If you believe in these hip hop artists, understand that Public Enemy is where we come from. What did Chuck D say? Farrakhan's a prophet that I think you should listen to. What he could say to you. What you ought to do is follow for now. Power the people say. You understand? All of this is, and what I love so much about what Sadiq says is that this is where we come from and this is who we are. And so this is a moment that requires not to big up me as a way of feeling good. Like, I listen to that guy and I like that guy. This is not about me. Because trust and believe, none of the things that I've said, for me, it's about black liberation because of the fact that there are no human beings. Humanity will not be valued until black people are valued. All lives won't matter until black lives matter. Black people, Native people, Indigenous people, First Nations, African Americans, whatever the language is, and I respect people for whatever language they choose to use. None of this can be remedied. America will always be a broken place. America will always, and there are good people in America. There are a lot of well-intentioned people in America. There's a lot of beauty in the language of America. But because of the fact that that wasn't true, even in the moment it was spoken, the people that wrote the Constitution owned slaves. The first presidents owned slaves. The people that built this country owned slaves. They were slave owners. What did Dave Chappelle say? Yes, it's great that we took Saddam Hussein off the money, because when I look at my money, they look like baseball cards with slave owners on them. Me and Mujah Messiah did a song called Pocket Full of Slave Owners. This is in the very essence, not only of who this country is, but in the way that we've understood ourselves to be. And so there won't be a real change until, and what's it going to require for people to really look at themselves, look at ourselves seriously? It's going to require a very deep spiritual connection, because there's got to be something to hold on to that predates the modern idea and understanding of who we are. This is why, for me, Islam is not just something that I sit and bow down on the floor and do. To me, it's all connected. And Malcolm said, just looking at some of my friends that are texting me, one of the things that Malcolm said is, if the white people in this society would learn Islam, maybe if they would study and practice Islam, maybe it would connect them with being human again. And obviously that's what I believe. And I'm not saying that you have to become a Muslim, although if you would like to, part of my job is to serve you in doing that. But a lot of people won't do that, and I understand that. And that's not the only way for that to happen. But what I'm saying is that this is not going to be about tweets, and it's not going to be about posts, and it's not going to be about likes. Even though those things, when they're helpful, they're helpful. When they're good, they're good. It's better than being silent. But what's going to have to happen is a radical re-examination and redefinition of the society and of ourselves, of yourself. And to me, that's why the Nation of Islam spoke to me. And I'm not a member of the Nation of Islam. I'm not a member of Farrakhan's group. I'm a member. I'm a person that I'm a part of Orthodox Sunni Islam. But my spiritual lineage, the people that brought me into this religion, the people that taught me, the people that trained me, the people that made me what I am, the people that taught me how to speak, the people that taught me how to rhyme, the people that taught me how to fight, how to be who I am, how to understand myself, how to learn myself. All of these people come from that tradition that started out by saying the so-called Negro. What does that do? Because for years, people have been taught to believe that that's what I am. Black people were taught to believe that's what I am. And so saying the so-called Negro says, just because this society says you are, you existed before this society. And who were you before this society? If we're talking about African people, we're talking about the mother and father of civilization, the mother and father of humanity. Ultimately, even not only are we talking about a global connectivity, but we're also talking about the mother and father of civilization. So until those people are respected, treated, listened to, followed, understood, and not just dehumanized to where we like to look at your sexy body parts. We like to look at your cool dance. We like the cool way you talk. We like your awesome music. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel powerful. It makes us feel like there's meaning to life. It makes us feel like it's going to be okay. It makes me feel more human. It makes me feel all of this stuff. But we don't give a damn if there's officers of the state, paid officers of the state, that have the backing of what we're seeing now, the backing of the army, the backing of the president, the backing of the military, the backing of the National Guard. They're allowed to shoot you. They're allowed to kill you. We don't care if those people dehumanize you. We don't care if your history is left out of the books in school. We don't care if you're told that you're ugly. We don't care that Beyonce, we'll go ahead and lighten Beyonce even. We put her on a magazine, we'll go ahead and just lighten her up to make her a little more presentable. And we don't really listen to black women if they have all their clothes on. Constantly using human beings means that humanity gets devalued. The moment you refuse the human rights for just a few, what happens when that few becomes you? What did I say? What did I say? Try to remove a man from his soul. What did I say? Try to detach a man from his soul. You only strengthen him and hurt your own. We're talking about our own survival. This is not a charity thing. It's not something that's being done for other people. What I say to white people, and I'm the whitest person you know, what I say to white people is the reality is you don't know yourself. You don't know who you are without being better than somebody else. You can't be you without stepping on somebody. So what this is going to really require is a very deep look at self. I'm going to stop talking now because this is not about me. This is not about me. This will be a success when there's complete black liberation. This will be success when there's complete enfranchisement. That's when there'll be a success. Up until that point, no patting on the back by anybody not in the black experience is valued by me. Not from me, not praising me, not praising anybody else, not praising yourself, not patting yourself on the back, not feeling good about anything. None of that feeling good to me. My survival, your survival, whether you know it or not, is tied up in the well-being of black people, indigenous people. And yes, every other cause, I'm down for all of that. If you're gay, I don't know if you know this or not, but I said words in my first album and wrote articles and talked about the fact that I had to check myself on that. I had to make amends for that. I had to really sit with myself with that. All of the stuff around misogyny and or the stuff around being poor and the stuff around being all of these things. I'm a person with a disability. You know what I'm saying? All of that. Yes, it's all real. It's all real. It's all real as hell. And that's why, where was the point, if we go back and search it back, where was the point where it didn't matter if someone was human? Where was that point? When did that happen? When did that happen? That happened on slave ships. That happened in genocide of First Nations people. That's the point that happened. So you go back and deal with that, everything, all these other things will fall into place. The world will still be the world. It's not going to be a utopia. The world will still be the world. But to have these like societal programs of dehumanizing other people, where did it start? Because that's where it's going to start to change and unravel. That's where it will unravel. Signing off now. Signing off. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.